Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, some NFL news that might cause the Raiders to make a roster move. In the middle of June, I'm always somebody that's out there looking for the latest on the silver and black, but a lot of times, there's not a lot of stuff happening in June. So when other things happen around the NFL, I'm a big believer that the National Football League, I like to call them a dominoes league. When one domino falls, sometimes multiple dominoes start to fall, and a certain domino fell in the last 24 hours. I don't want to talk about it because I think it could force the Raiders to make a roster move. If you don't know, we are 49 subs away from 195,000 subscribers. For news updates and the latest going on around this football team right here, I promise you this, you're never going to miss anything going on. If it's a big story, we're covering it. If it's a little story like the Raiders cutting a player, I'm going to cover it. If I don't cover it, it probably hasn't happened. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. So let's talk about the news that happened, because actually, there was something that happened yesterday and also something that happened today, which I'll talk about at the end of today's show. But Shaquill Griffin, he ended up signing with the Seattle Seahawks yesterday. And as soon as I saw that happen, the first thing that I popped into my head was, I wonder what the Raiders are going to do. Because if you did not know, a few weeks ago, Shaquill Griffin ended up having a 2-day visit with the Raiders. I believe they brought him in on a Wednesday, and I don't know exactly why the meeting ended up going until the next day as well. So basically a 2-day meeting. Since I have covered the NFL and since I have covered the Raiders, if you bring a player in for a 2-day meeting, that means that either A, you were very interested in that player, or B, in my mind, you were very interested in that position that player played. So to me, I'm wondering if the Raiders now are going to be potentially looking to add a corner, because if they had somebody circled on their radar, like, all right, we're going to be able to get Shaquill Griffin if we are not 100% confident, let's say, in a Darian Porter, a Jacorian Bennett, and an Eric Stokes, they might have thought that, hey, this could have been our get-out-of-jail-for-free card in Griffin. Well, now he's off the board. And now that you know that he's off the board, does Spytek and Pete go, well, now we got to go out and try to get a corner because maybe we're not 100% confident in our guys. And I am somebody, again, that believes dominoes tend to fall after certain signings. And in a dead period that we are in right now here in the NFL, as soon as I saw the news around Griffin, the first thing I thought of is, what are the Raiders going to do? And a lot of the shows that I do here are this. I'm not somebody that tries to be a beat reporter. I am a normal Raiders fan that if I think something is cool or if I think about it, I'm going to tell the nation because I think the way that Raiders fans think. So here is something that I thought that the Griffin move could force the Raiders to do. The first thing that I thought of is, all right, if Griffin is out the door, and because he had that connection to Pete Carroll and because he played at a high level at one time, coming off a good season with the Minnesota Vikings, could this make the Raiders go out and sign a legit corner? And to me, when I think of legit corners on the open market, there's only a few names I'm going to throw out there. The first name that I'll mention is Rasul Douglas. Pete Carroll, I've already said I think is the perfect coach for Douglas, just based on Pete's track record with past lanky corners, and kind of, for Douglas, who I think wants to bounce back after having a little bit of a down year. You can see there with that 59.2 overall PFF grade, but the size, the physicality, it kind of matches. 6'2", 210 pounds, long, lanky. That's the type of corner that Pete typically looks for, and because this team does really value relationships, Douglas doesn't really have a relationship with anybody on this squad in terms of coaching, but he does have a relationship with Eric Stokes, and Douglas was a Pro Bowler when him and Stokes were teammates back with the Green Bay Packers in 2021. So I get it. He's 30 years old, coming off a little bit of a down year, but that could be a corner that you would at least potentially keep in mind. Another corner that I'm going to bring up here is Stephon Gilmore. So over the past 3 seasons, 48 games played, 48 games started, and maybe they're looking for somebody that is, a little bit of a veteran, kind of like what Griffin was, and when you have such a young cornerback room, I also think that the Raiders, kind of what they did at linebacker, they brought in a Devin White, they brought in a Jermaine Pratt, they brought in a Landon Roberts to try to stack with the Amari Burney, Tommy Eichenberg, Amari Gaynor, Cody Lindenberg. And when I look at the Raiders cornerback room, it's also a very young group, so could they bring in somebody that, yes, I get it, it's 34 years old, but Gilmore to me does have some of that versatility, and I'm not going to lie, and I know I've said this before as well, I wonder if Gilmore could potentially play safety. Patrick Peterson, converted corner to go to safety. Charles Woodson, corner, converted to safety. When you're a difference maker and you are an elite player in your prime like Gilmore was, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2016, if you're still playing at a high level and you want to make that move, I think that's a move to make. Also, Gilmore, play with the Minnesota Vikings. I think good coaches watch film. If you were watching film on Shaquill Griffin, you can't tell me you weren't watching film on Stephon Gilmore. Let's go to another corner here that has been mentioned recently. I actually had a source in the last 48 hours tell me, watch out for Mike Hilton. And I'm always somebody that, again, when you talk about Dominos, where there's smoke, there's fire. I saw a week ago a report from Vincent Bonsignor that said, hey, just like watch out for a name like Mike Hilton because he plays this nickel back role. And if we're talking about the difference between Hilton compared to Gilmore and Douglas, Hilton is that nickel, and I get it. When you look at the Raiders cornerback room right now, nickel is the one spot in that secondary, not free safety, that does concern me a lot. And I do think with the relationship that Hilton has with somebody like Jermaine Pratt, if you were the Raiders and you were saying, hey, I don't really want to go out and I want to spend big and I want Shaquill Griffin, now that this free agency pool of corners is a little bit thinner, I think you have to make a decision if you're an NFL team, because if you do want a corner and you wait until all the corners are gone, you're probably going to end up paying more at the end of it. Where if you're able to swoop in right now, get the guy that you want, where there's still some other names out there, I think you might save yourself a few $1 million down the end of the road. And every $1 million, every dollar, when you are a team that's trying to rebuild and you're trying to build it for the long haul, I don't give a shit what anybody says. Every dollar matters for the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming season. So I want you to finish this sentence for me. The next player the Raiders will sign is fill in the blank, finish the sentence. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. While you're getting hit with a YouTube ad break, please finish this off. Let me know down below. I know I was going to say finish me off, but that would have been good. Compete cornerbacks. Some of you might go, what the hell is a compete cornerback? Let me walk you through it. To me, the Raiders this offseason have signed players that are bottom of the roster guys, but all they want is somebody that goes out there and competes. And I think a great example of this is somebody like a Michael Barrett. Linebacker, Michigan ties, has a track record of just being a really hard-nosed player. Now, the names that I'm about to bring up are not names that you're going to put out there in the starting lineup. These are names that simply that you know are going to go out there, they're going to practice, they're going to go out there and compete, and they also have a coaching connection with the silver and black. The first name I'm going to bring up, James Bradberry. Did not play in 2024 with an Achilles injury, but he does have ties to Patrick Graham in 2020 and in 2021. I bring this up because also the Raiders, reminder, they signed Jalen Smith right after the draft, during literally rookie minicamp. And because of the coaching connection with Bradberry, he's a veteran. I don't know how hard he's going to be out there working, but I do think he would be a good asset to have in training camp. And maybe that's why you bring him in. Another name that I'll throw out there is somebody that is known for competing, Trey Flowers, who played 4 years with Pete Carroll from 2018 to 2021. Only 4 tackles last season, but long, lanky, had some good years back there in Seattle with Pete. And if you feel like that your cornerback room needs just a little push, I think Trey Flowers could be somebody that helps you do that. Next name I'm going to be bringing up here is Chris Lamons, who, again, a little bit of an undersized guy. This guy's got the connection to Patrick Graham. 1 year with him with the Miami Dolphins in 2019 and has had some opportunities to get some playing time and more of a special teams roster dude. But he's going to be a name I'll throw out there. And then the final compete corner, I'll say, is Andre Shashir, who 6 foot, basically 200 pounds, more of just a special teams guy. I actually think he's probably a little bit better off as a, we'll call it safety cornerback hybrid overall. Not the best in coverage, I'm going to be honest with you. But this guy kind of reminds me of somebody like a good safe. Like, I don't want to say Chris Smith because I think Chris Smith is a hard-working dude, but at the exact same time, Chris Smith would make your back end a little bit better simply because he's going to go out there and he's going to give you 110%. And for a player that was undrafted, and for a guy that really made his stamp, and where he made his stamp was he was on practice squads, he was cut, he was undrafted. In 2019, he ended up making the Arizona Cardinals roster, and then the following year he had a good year, and then the following season he ended up signing with another football team. But where he really got his first start was with Marcus Robinson, the Raiders cornerback coach, DB coach, and I wonder, could that be somebody that they bring in because he's also known for being a hardworking player? The next move that I wonder that the Raiders could do, because they have 91 players on their roster, is do you cut a player to make room? And typically what teams do is they'll sign a guy first and then they end up cutting somebody. It's what they did with Jermaine Pratt. It's just typically what teams do. But there are opportunities and there are instances where teams sometimes cut a player, and then we're sitting there going, well, now we can add a guy. And if the Raiders end up cutting a player, here are the top 8 names that I'll throw out there. You have a lot of wide receivers up here, and that's just because I think the Raiders are a little bit more confident in their wide receiver room. You got some offensive linemen, running back Chris Collier. Overall, these are not players that are going to make the 53-man. Knowing that they're not going to make the 53-man, do you move on from a dude? That way you free up a little bit of space, and that space you're freeing up is that roster spot for the Raiders to go out and potentially get somebody. Coming up next, though, I got more NFL news that could impact the Raiders. I am somebody that is nervous about what exactly is happening with Christian Wilkins, and I do wonder, could the Raiders potentially look to add somebody on that defensive line? Because, again, you're not going to be able to replace Wilkins. But could you add a player that helps the overall defensive line? Maybe somebody that's going to be a good competitor, and that's going to make your overall D-line better to help replace Christian Wilkins. Before I get into that, though, I love America, and I love the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you're trying to get a Raiders and USA shirt, go to chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. What'd you say? Yep, please don't do that. If you're looking for a Raiders shirt, though, I mean, like, I'm somebody where I never know what to wear on the 4th of July. And my dad told me that I'm not allowed to wear my usual 4th of July shirt, which I can wear it on I'll tell you this. I'll try to wear it on, July 3rd? I'll try to wear my, Dad, you know what shirt I'm talking about. I'll try to wear that one. Bottom line, I never know what to wear on 4th of July. I go to the pool, I eat a bunch of food, we have some drinks, and I want to be able to rock the Raiders, and I want to be able to rock America. If you're the same way, chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. So some of the NFL news that happened today, and it came in bright and early this morning. Ogbo Okoronkwo, hopefully I pronounced that right. Okoronkwo signed a 3-year, $19 million deal with the Browns. This was back in, I want to say, 2023. He was released today. And any time that a player gets added to the free agency pool, I just want to be able to talk about him a little bit. He actually had a good year with the Texans in 2022, but over the past 2 seasons in Cleveland, didn't quite put up the numbers that I think the Browns were hoping for when they signed him. But then again, 3 sacks, 4.5 sacks, all I would need him to do is be able to pin his ears back, get north and south, and allow him to be an athlete. Yeah, he's getting up there in age a little bit, but I think one of the best things that Patrick Graham has always been able to do, and one of these things that, Rob Leonard has always been able to do, is get the most out of their players. And if I got $1 for every time I have said Levon Chasen replacement, I'd probably have a good $200, $300 in my pocket. And that's kind of how I look at this move. And anytime that there's somebody that I do think could be on a 53-man roster, guess what? I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about it on this show. So I do wonder if the Raiders could potentially be looking at him. Just another name to keep in mind. Before I wrap up today's show, if you do not know, June, it's almost over, and I feel like June literally went by in the blink of an eye. And if you're trying to get into our Raiders Report Fantasy Football League, this might be one of your last opportunities to do it. We're going to do a 12-team league, potentially 14-team league. Whoever the MVP is, whoever bangs the most, right now it's Fabian Moreno, you're automatically in. And every $5 super chat we get, that's a raffle ticket. Every $5 super thanks we get is a raffle ticket. We're going to announce that winner on June 30th, and I would really, really like the winner to be there watching the live show when it all goes down.